Hello my treasures, it's time for some exciting Hearthstone news. This time, the announcement of the next Hearthstone set, Festival of Legends, which is going to be centered around musicians in the Warcraft universe, which we actually didn't really have too many magicians before this announcement, but the two groups that we did have were ETC and Blighted Boar, both of which will make an appearance in this set. So let's begin with the general themes of the set. The first thing that we need to know is each class is going to have its own genre of music. A Death Knight is going to have metal, which I'm assuming is going to be Blighted Boar. Druid will have hippie, which I didn't even know was a genre of music. Demon Hunter will be emo. Hunter will be folk. Mage will be electronic. Paladin disco. Priest pop. Rogue hip hop. Warlock classical, which is kind of a weird twist. Shaman jazz. And warrior rock. While thematically, a lot of these make a lot of sense, Mage, Warlock, and Shaman are the three that seem to be the big outliers in my opinion. I would have assumed Electronic would have probably went with Shaman because there is the elemental theme there. Jazz would be what I would give to Warlock normally, mainly because jazz music at one point was known as the quote-unquote devil's music, and that's more thematic there. And then Mage is kind of hard to think of something, which is probably why they ended up going with Electronic. But then again, electronic music is a huge genre, and there's a lot of subgenres, so maybe they'll choose something that actually does mate. So there are a lot of different possibilities. I'm shocked that funk wasn't actually included on this list. So the new keyword for the set is going to be Finale. Cards with Finale will gain additional bonuses if you spend all of your remaining mana on them. You know, people were predicting maybe Encore would be the new keyword, but this makes a lot of sense too, and is something that we haven't had in Hearthstone's past. As I would assume, a keyword of Encore would be very similar to Echo. The next big theme that we are going to be getting is legendary musicians and songs. So each class is going to have a legendary spell and a legendary minion that represents whatever musician of their class. Which, historically speaking, legendary spells weren't always the most impactful of the unique cards that you could actually get. So we might be actually seeing a lower power set for this initial set compared to some of the previous years where we got things like quest lines as the first set. It's going to be interesting to see if the legendary minion interacts with the legendary spell of each individual class, or if they're going to be unique on their own fronts. We are going to be getting a new class keyword for Priest, which is going to be a evergreen keyword for their class identity called Overheal. Overheal is a trigger effect that does something once the minion is healed above their maximum HP. For example, the new legendary for the set is going to have an Overheal, deal 5 damage to a random enemy, and if you figure out a way to actually go infinite with this card, then you could OTK your opponent in one turn. I don't think something like Radiant Elemental is probably going to survive the new rotation in Standard Hearthstone, because if you can somehow randomly generate a Holy Mackerel roll, then you automatically OTK your opponent no matter what on turn 6, which would be incredibly frustrating to actually play against, and I don't think Blizzard would want to do something like that. The next thing being added is Instrument Weapons, which is going to represent whatever type of music for each individual class, and they're going to have powerful death rattle effects that improve whenever you have the weapon in play by doing certain things. This should give us some key identities for some of the classes that we don't currently know what they're going to be all about, such as Rogue, where it looks like we're going to have a lot of combo cards, and then Death Knight, where we're going to have a bunch of lifesteal. And now we have Harmonic Spells, which are going to be swapping between two versions of themselves on each individual turn. We actually saw a prototype of this in the Thaddeus card, and while this isn't a new keyword, it does introduce a very flexible new type of card where it's going to swap effects each individual turn, thus allowing you to have two different ways to use a card depending on how it is actually swapping between the effects. Finally, we have the Standout Artist, which will be minions that will gain additional effects if they are the only minions on board. We'll have to see what all of these ones actually do, but it is going to be interesting to see that Blizzard is shifting back to having a non-board based meta. And to start off the card reviews for this set, we're going to start with the login reward, which is going to be ETC, a ban manager, which has the ability, while you're building your deck, assemble a ban of 3 cards. Discover one. So this introduces sideboarding into Hearthstone, which is a mechanic I never expected to see. It's something very common practice in a lot of other card games. This should allow you to actually easily access some key tech choices against certain decks, while not also worrying about them actually being dead in other matchups. thus massively increasing the playability of a lot of those cards that you might not normally want to run. You could also use this as a spicy way to get to key combo pieces if you really need to, or even make a no minion Demon Hunter deck with 5 minions, or until he rotates out, you could probably use this in combination with Brand's Bronzebeard, Shadow Step, Mailbox Dancer, and some cheap base damaging spell or the location in order to OTK your opponent on turn 7 or so, because you could in theory get infinite mana with using that combination. Not really the way that I would have preferred to see something like this, and it'll probably be something that a lot of people will test out early on. I do think this will probably see a lot of play in a control style deck where you're going to want to have some tech choices against certain decks. But now with the free card out of the way, let's begin with the Death Knight cards. The first one is going to be Arcanine Ripper, which is a 3 cost, 3 attack, 2 durability weapon. Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Lifesteal Undead. Change your health on your turn while equipped to improve. So this should be good in a Blood Death Knight deck, especially since we are seeing a lot of lifesteal within this set, which means you could easily change your HP pool by quite a lot really quickly. Sure, you're not going to always be able to get the biggest minion on board, but if you can play this down early enough where you're not actually attacking and you're just sitting on 1 durability of the weapon, build up a huge undead minion, which, speaking of which, will actually feed into the second copy of this weapon, as that will be an additional way to actually change your HP on your given turn. And because you will be attacking into probably some minions with this card, no matter what, you should be able to get a 3/3 lifesteal undead, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Sure, it isn't going to be the strongest all the time, but Death Knight does have a lot of ways to change their HP pool. The next card revealed was Harmonic Metal, which is our first harmonic spell that gives 4 random minions in your hand +2/+2. Swaps each turn, and then the swap give 2 random minions in your hand +4/+4. So depending on how many minions you actually have in your hand, the +4/+4 could actually be way better. However, if you are just a swarming rainbow deck where you're going to have a bunch of different minions in your hand that you want to easily buff up, then the 4 random minions in your hand will be a lot better, especially if you can get this on board with some of the other cards that make additional copies that are currently in Hearthstone. That could easily make a hand buffing Blood Death Knight deck work. It's actually kind of curious. That was a deck that we were missing maybe 1 or 2 cards before it became incredibly powerful, and it looks like this is the best support we're probably ever going to get for a deck like that. The next card revealed is Screaming Banshee, a lifesteal. After your hero gains health, summon a soul with that much attack and health. So this in combination with Vampiric Blood is going to be incredibly annoying to actually deal with. So this in combination with Vampiric Blood is a 13/16 minion on turn 8, which might be a little bit too slow. However, there are other ways to get Vampiric Blood in a Death Knight that don't require it to actually cost 3 mana. Now for the last Death Knight card, which is Climactic Necrotic Explosion. If I've never heard a innuendo, that is definitely an innuendo. It's going to be a rainbow spell. It has 10 mana as its cost. The ability is Lifesteal. Deal 5 damage, summon 2 1/1 souls. Randomly improves by corpses you've spent. So Blizzard actually did some clarification with this card, what it means by randomly improves. The last effect, which summons the additional souls, is only going to improve up to 7 because there's only 7 slots. But the stat lines on the souls and the 5 damage are going to be able to basically upgrade up to infinity, which if you're going to use this in a Rainbow Death Knight deck, there are a lot of ways to actually get a lot of advantage and a lot of corpses within the deck. I do think this actually basically completely removes the want to ever do a pure unholy base deck, because this is just basically a better Lord Marrow Guard, in my opinion, because it does allow you to have access to face damage while also healing yourself up, and also allows you to swarm the board if you spend enough corpses throughout the game. I'm curious if this works while it's only in your hand or if it's also when it's in the deck, because if it is throughout the entire game, this could be an incredibly annoying card to actually deal with. Sure, it costs 10, which is the one downside, and there aren't really that many ways to randomly generate this because it isn't a shadow spell. But if you do find a way to get additional copies, your opponent is going to be in a big world of hurt, because it is basically a Reno Jackson that also swarms the board and probably allows you to have an insane damage output with the damage part of the ability. Now for the next card revealed, which is Peaceful Piper, which is a 1 cost, 1 HP, 1 attack. Choose 1 minion for Druid that draws a beast or discover 1. So if you have some key beasts that you actually want to have really easy access to, this is the perfect card for you. However, a lot of the really good beast cards that I would want to use this in combination with this, such as Elwyn Boar, are rotating out once the new rotation actually happens. So I'm assuming we're probably going to see some new beast support within the new set. Honestly speaking, we have had a lot of beast support over the past year and a half. However, none of it actually ever did anything by itself. So a card like this is very much welcome. And now for the next card, which is Starlight Groove, which gives your hero Divine Shield for the rest of the game. Play a holy spell, refreshes it. So Ariel is rotating out, and we get a replacement for her already. So Control Paladin is probably not going to be a deck that dies. This card is incredibly good. It's incredibly cheap for that style of deck. There are ways to generate additional copies of this if you for some reason really wanted to generate additional copies, but most of the time you're not going to want to, and you can easily search it within your deck, thus allowing you to get this effect on way earlier than you could ever get the Cariel effect. It also does prevent some OTK strategies that your opponent might have, where the first damage that your opponent is going to do each individual turn is always going to be 0, and if they don't have a way to pop the Divine Shield, then they're going to be in a world for hurt, because you could also use that Divine Shield in combination with some weapons in order to just prevent yourself from taking any face damage, or even use some of the Blood Paladin support we saw in the March of the Lich King set, where you're no longer having to take face damage in order to buff up your minions. Sure, we are going to be losing some Divine Shield synergy that is going to be rotating out, but I do think this is going to be a very powerful control tool in both Standard and probably Wild. Now for the next card revealed, which is Fan Club, which means Priest is the first class to have 2 location cards, which is kind of cool, which could actually increase the playability of one of my favorite cards from Castle Anathria, which discovers a random copy of a card in your deck if you have the location on board. And because now Priest has access to 4 locations instead of just 2, this will be a lot more consistent, especially the effect itself, which restores 3 HP to all friendly characters, should be incredibly good, especially with the new Overheal mechanic that Priest is going to be getting in the new rotation and seen in the new Legendary, which honestly should make up for the loss of the fact that we are going to be losing Zyrilla for a healing style of Priest deck. Now for the next Priest card revealed, it is Power Chord Synchronize, which chooses a minion, add a copy to your hand. Finale, give both +1/+2. So if you need a way to actually generate additional copies of cards, this is the perfect card for you. Another reason why I don't think Radiance Elemental is going to survive the new rotation. I'd be very much shocked if it did, because that card could be incredibly broken with something like this. It would be on turn 3, a 3-mana combo that allows you to get 2 Radiant Elementals and making them really hard for your opponent to actually deal with, and then it could just keep snowballing from there. It is kind of sad that Lyra never actually saw any competitive play while she was in rotation, and if the Radiant Elementals are going, I'm assuming she will probably actually go too, because this is the perfect support for both of those cards. However, because we do know that Priest is getting a huge rework in the new core set, that I'm assuming most of the Priest cards will not be surviving the rotation, and thus makes it a little bit harder to actually see how powerful this is going to be. So let's get into the next card, which is going to be Beatboxer, which is a 4 attack, 3 HP, 3 cost mech minion for Rogue that has the combo deal force damage randomly split among all enemies. So we're going to see a return of Combo Rogue, which is cool because combo is their own unique keyword. However, I don't think this card is strong enough for you want to run it in any deck by itself, unless you have ways to actually discount all the combo cards. There are a few combo cards that are really good that are going to be rotating out pretty soon, especially when this new set comes out, such as Scabs, which makes a card like this a little bit less playable. However, if we do see another way to actually discount combo cards within the Rogue class, then this card could, in theory, be played, but I don't think it's going to be played much, if at all, because it just doesn't do enough damage to warrant any play. Now, for the next card revealed, which is going to be Record Scratcher, which is a 3 cost, 2 attack, 2 durability, weapon for Rogue, Death Rattle, refresh, and 1 mana crystal. Play combo cards while equipped to improve. Why is Rogue getting mana refresh? That does not seem like a good idea, in my opinion. There's so many weird, wacky combos that Rogue can always have access to that a card like this is very, very scary. However, if we don't see a critical mass of combo cards, then a card like this might not see too much play in standard Hearthstone. However, I'm sure glad that Spectral Pillager actually saw a huge nerf in Wild, even though I don't play the game mode, because that in combination with this would be incredibly, incredibly broken. I don't know if that style of deck would actually run this, because I don't know how many combo cards they run, but refreshing mana crystals is always a problem and could see some play somewhere. It just is a matter of time if we get a critical mass of combo cards or not. Now for the next card revealed, which is Brass Elemental. That is a 4-cost, 3 attack, 3 HP elemental minion with Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt, and Wind Fury. Man, they really are pushing elemental synergy, I guess, with Shaman. It's been a while since we've seen that actually be pushed. A lot of those cards are actually rotating out, which means a card like this doesn't have too much of a home once the new rotation actually happened. However, depending on what other Shaman cards we actually see for the set, this could be incredibly powerful. It has a lot of keywords for 4 mana, which makes it really difficult to actually deal with, especially because of the fact that it does have Divine Shield, and it does also have Wind Fury, thus allowing you to get rid of either 2 minions on board, or if you allow your opponent to actually stick this on board for an additional turn, this could be 6 damage to their face, or even more, depending if they have Earthbite weapon, which could increase its attack to 6, and thus allowing you to OTK your opponent on turn 5 or 6, depending on how many weapons that you could actually get in combination with this. I do think this has a lot of potential. I just don't know where it fits currently. Now for the next card, which is Void Urchirosu, which is a 1-cost, 1 attack, 3 HP demon. During your turn, your hero is immune. I don't know what deck this is going to fit into necessarily, but it does look incredibly powerful. Anything that allows you to be immune on your turn or on any turn. Sure, something like Stealer of Souls is actually going to be rotating out, which would be the best card to use this in combination with, but because this is a 1 mana cost card, you could easily use this on turn 1, then use your hero power on turn 2, thus making it where you don't take any face damage whenever you do use your hero power, and this could just be a auto-include in most Warlock decks because it is such a powerful card. Alright, the next card is going to be Opera Soulless, which is a 5-cost demon with 4 attack, 6 HP, Battle Cry. If you control no other minions, deal 3 damage to all enemy minions. So we're losing Entitled Customer and we're getting a new card for a control Warlock deck, which is going to be a much harder condition to actually fulfill. However, I do think this will probably see some play in that style of deck. It really just depends on how spell-based Warlock is going to be within this set. I don't think this is as playable as the previous card, as this does require a bit of setup. It is nice to see the return of Demon Warlock, since that, for some weird reason, is a genre of Warlock that has been missing for at least a year or two. It would be funny if Fel Warlock also got support once we got all the Fel Warlock support cards rotating out. Now for the neutral cards, the first one being Hipster, which is a 2-cost, 1 attack, 3 HP neutral minion. Battle Cry, discover a spell from your opponent's class that isn't in their deck. This card is just terrible. There is no redeeming this card. The problem with the card is most of the cards that you're going to randomly generate off of this are going to be cards that your opponent had no use for, so why would you have any use for it? Sure, some of the matchups this is going to be incredibly good, such as Shadow Priest, where you're going to generate a bunch of control tools. However, a lot of cards for Shadow Priest are rotating out, including Archbishop Benedictus, which means they don't have instant shadow form, and I don't think that deck will probably survive the new rotation unless that card is in the core set. Generally, most of the time, this is just going to generate you a bunch of really bad cards, and I don't see how that is going to help you out in most cases. Next card revealed is Ghost Writer, which is a 5-cost, 4 attack, 4 HP undead minion. Battle Cry, discover a spell. Finale, discover another. So if this is the last card you play on a given turn, then you're going to get 2 spells for the price of 5 mana, which isn't really that bad. However, most of the cards that you're going to want to randomly generate, you're probably going to want to use on the same turn you play something like this down, so you're probably most of the time only going to discover 1 card. Outside of undead synergy decks, I don't know how much playability this card actually has. I do like the possibility and the flexibility of the card, giving you 2 cards instead of 1, but most of the time it's really just going to be just an alright card. I think it costs a little bit too much, in my opinion, for it to see too much play. Now for the next card, which is the One-Amalgam Ban, which is a 7 cost, 6 attack, 6 HP, all minion that has the battle cry. Gain a random bonus effect for each minion type you've played this game. So we have a critical mask of amalgams currently in Standard Hearthstone. This is the 5th one, where you could use all 5 of those pretty easily in any synergistic deck, plus whatever synergy that you actually want to get at least 5 bonus effects on this card. I'm really curious of what the bonus effects will be, mainly due to the fact that we don't really know what they will be, and depending on what they are, this card could be either incredibly playable or just incredibly bad. It costs 7, which makes it a little bit harder to actually use, but it is a nice payoff for any synergy decks that you might actually want to play, and as mentioned before, isn't really the hardest conditions to actually fulfill, given the fact that there are so many amalgams in Standard Hearthstone. So those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know down below what band or what genre of music you're most looking forward to actually playing around with. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.